There's a lot of reasons why TRON Uprising is one of my favorite Disney cartoons of all time, and it's not just because the show stands as a technical marvel, or because of how the series and TRON Legacy ignited my love of shot composition as well as cinematography. Rather, it's also because of the inherent politics within its narrative. How, at its core, TRON Uprising is an anti-fascist Disney cartoon. Now listen, I do think it's in poor taste to say things like, your favorite character Naruto Uzumaki hates fascism, but I also think it's much more productive to critically analyze the narratives that those characters appear in to understand what ideas are truly at its foundation. Instead of pretending that the characters you like share the same beliefs as you, ask yourself if the story has any relevance to those beliefs, and if so, what exactly is it saying about them? Does the narrative story of Naruto have anything to say about anti-fascism? Or in my case, does TRON Uprising have anything to say about anti-fascism? Because based upon what I found, the answer is yes. While TRON Legacy focuses on its human protagonist venturing into a digital frontier in search of his father, TRON Uprising instead focuses on the inhabitants of that digital frontier, the synthetic yet humanoid programs living inside of it. The story isn't about the human beings that are like gods compared to computer programs. It's about those very programs as a common people, how they are important enough to have agency in the story, how they are capable of growing beyond what they were designed for, and how each of their lives are valuable in their own right, which, to me, goes against the very nature of what fascism is. In his 1995 essay, Eternal Fascism, 14 Ways of Looking at a Black Shirt, author Umberto Eco describes common identifiers of fascism as a cult of tradition, a rejection of modernism, action for action's sake, anti-intellectualism, a fear of difference, fascination with weapons, an eternal period of wartime, feeling humiliated by enemies, contempt for the weak, elitism, and appeals to xenophobia, with the latter elements being especially relevant to the villains of the TRON sequels. The plot of TRON Legacy is set in motion by its main antagonist, Clue, played by Jeff Bridges, whose efforts to create the perfect system lead him to take power through an insurrection against his human creator, rule over the digital world with an iron fist, and enact genocide against a specific race of individuals that he views as imperfect, being the self-manifested isomorphic algorithms, or ISOs for short. Clue's regime is built upon military occupation, elitism, xenophobia, and, as indicated by the establishment of arenas where citizens fight to the death, a contempt for the weak, which lines up with the core elements of fascism outlined by Umberto Eco's essay. In TRON Uprising, Clue's military has taken control of several cities across the digital frontier by force, installing top generals as governors and killing citizens with impunity, which causes an ordinary mechanic named Beck, Uprising's protagonist, voiced by Elijah Wood, to secretly disguise himself as the well-known heroic figure Tron and fight back against the occupation of his home. Given that the phrase anti-fascist and its abbreviation Antifa simply means to be against fascism, a narrative where a group of fascists are the antagonists who are being opposed by a protagonist that the story is meant to side with. In other words, if the fascists are the bad guys and the good guys don't like them, then it stands to reason that the work itself is anti-fascist. If you don't like fascism and you don't want your home to be governed by fascism, you are, by definition, anti-fascist. And so is TRON Uprising, because of its narrative framing, as well as how its dialogue literally sounds like anti-fascist rhetoric.
Their actions have consequences.
So does inaction. More slavery. More friends of mine. Gone.
Our protagonist makes it known that he doesn't want to directly kill anyone, but he's not opposed to punching his adversaries, which isn't a contradiction. Rather, it speaks to the fact that you don't have to kill people to be anti-fascist, and the fact that not all forms of violence are equal. Killing someone is far worse than punching someone or destroying property. So no matter how many sentries he fights or how many material objects he breaks, Beck will never be just as bad as the oppressors, because whatever damage he's done pales in comparison to the sheer amount of suffering, death, and systemic injustice that has been inflicted by the occupation. TRON Uprising is a series where the protagonist destroys a giant statue of a fascist dictator within the first episode, and goes on to constantly rescue citizens from being forcefully imprisoned, freeing them from a system that generally leads them to their death, while the antagonists respond by labeling the main character a terrorist and begin enforcing curfews designed to criminalize people rather than keeping them safe. Events which are all extremely relevant to the United States in the year 2020. However, there are a few ways in which TRON Uprising could be improved upon as an anti-fascist narrative. It's unknown how the protagonist feels about the genocide against the ISOs, because he's not really fighting against the fascism of Clue's xenophobia, but the fascism of a police state. It's really disappointing how the most prominent black characters in the series are killed off, because whether fictional or in the real world, black lives deserve to be treated with dignity. And while the show's presentation of the military commander Paige is nuanced in how she's a former medic who still has compassion for innocent people and occasionally puts in the effort to help them, I also think it's important to keep in mind that she is still complicit with the military's actions and still buys into Clue's xenophobia. Like, the fact that she's so close to joining the good guys makes it even worse that she willingly chooses to be a fascist, and the fact that Paige believes the lie that ISOs killed her friends doesn't just make her character tragic, it makes her dangerous, because she has joined the manufacturers of that lie to assist them with their xenophobic genocide.
I'm willing to give you a chance to join the right side and make the ISOs pay for what they've done.
How soon can I start?
The biggest shortcomings of TRON Uprising is that while it opposes fascism as an authoritarian state, it doesn't do enough to oppose fascism as a xenophobic state. It neglects the need to sympathize with those who are being othered in the context of the narrative, and those who are being othered in real life. But this isn't to say that the entire series is worthless, just that it's something that should be recognized in an honest discussion of TRON Uprising's narrative framing. And even with that in mind, there's still enough elements in the show to make it an anti-fascist narrative. Where another story might focus on a character who is born into greatness, Uprising is a narrative that focuses on a character with an ordinary background, who chooses to take on the mantle of a superhero so that he can inspire a revolution. Politics aren't separate from stories, they inform stories. So for me personally, TRON Uprising wasn't just an artistic formative experience, it was a political formative experience. Like so many other works of fiction that have always been viewed in a political context, such as Star Wars, The Matrix, and Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Disney cartoon known as TRON Uprising helped me realize that an unjust system is one that deserves to be rebelled against. that if you do nothing, injustice will continue to happen, and that opposing fascism doesn't make you a terrorist or a villain, it makes you a hero. No matter how you look at it, TRON Uprising is an anti-fascist Disney cartoon.